Thank you, Arunodha, for the opportunity, introduction, kind words, and the invite. It's a pleasure to be here with a formidable group of speakers. Well, 5G is coming. Streaming has always been a clear opportunity for the mobile industry and the communication industry. But with 5G, as we get more bandwidth, does it mean more streaming or a quality streaming? Does a responsive edge for the 5G networks enable better streaming experience or more interactiveness? We would like to explore with these expert speakers on some of these issues during the next half an hour. I have with me today Mr. M.N. Vyas from Planet Cast and Mr. Manoj Gurnani, who is the CTO of Nokia India, Mr. Rajat Nigam, the Group CTO of Network 18, and Mr. Vikram Tevatia, who is the DDG at Cellular Operator Association of India. Thank you all for joining us. Vikram, may I start with you? What are the challenges that mobile operators have been facing earlier when it comes to video streaming that you think 5G will alleviate?
So thank you, Rajiv. So the point is, let's see the good news first. India is in the top 5 countries for 4G availability, right? And as we all know, the largest amount of content that flows on the networks is video. So to your point about, what are the challenges about, existing technical challenges on video? So one of the things is that, operators in India have an average of about 60 megahertz of spectrum. On the access side, right, which is 1/3 of the spectrum actually held as a global average. It's 1/3 of the global average. Now, unlike many developed countries where streaming video is quite popular, India has only one dominant network. And that is the wireless network. Many other countries, you have an extensive fiber optic network or a cable network or other private networks. But in India, the wireless network is the dominant network, and hence the dependency on adequate availability of spectrum, both in the access and the backhaul side. Now, on the other challenge on the backhaul side is, India, we have only about 30% of our mobile towers are on fiber. So as a result, the carrying back over a microwave or the backhaul. So to get the whole video experience, you need adequate spectrum in the access, adequate connectivity in the backhaul, all the way to where the content is hosted, right? So this is one major challenge that we see. Other than that is obviously the hosting, enough cloud space in India. So the good news is on the spectrum side is that the TRAI has recommended auctions of a whole lot of new spectrum, which should happen in another couple of months. And you can see the deployments take place maybe in Q3, Q4 of this year. So overall, the potential of the current quality of video to go up, we see a good uptick in that as we see Q4 of this year. Back to you, Rajiv.
Okay, thank you so much, Vikram. Listening to you, Manoj, 5G is much more than the raw capacity that a bandwidth provides. It's much more than that. So reducing the discussion on 5G innovations to just the spectrum and the bandwidth would not be doing justice to the 5G technology, and a lot of work has gone into it. So would you help us with more what 5G brings for a video operator? What are the additional enhancements that are happening because of that?
So thanks, Rajiv, and good afternoon, everyone. So I think whenever you have the new generation of technology, it's expected to bring two things, right? More capabilities and more efficiencies. And that's exactly what 5G does. So that's not a surprise. We have all heard about things like capability which 5G will bring on table in terms of enhanced mobile broadband, talking about capacities in gigabits per second and latencies which are sub 5 milliseconds. I think all in all, it will lead to a very jitter-free experience in short. Now, how is 5G different? I mean, if you compare it to, say, preceding technologies like 4G. I think the first and foremost, and alluding to what Vikram said, it will bring on table FWT, the fixed wireless capabilities, which means the capability to fiberize on the wireless route, giving you the fiber-like experience. I think that's something which will really help enormously. Few more things, it brings on table huge amount of spectrum, and spectrum scarcity was always the issue. What 5G does is that in the C band, it brings a chunk of 500 megahertz at disposal. Then you have millimeter wave bands, right? So we are talking about 4 gigahertz kind of spectrum availability. Then you have a lot of capabilities in which you're trying to use multiple RAT technologies, the radio access technologies like 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, all working in tandem and enhancing the quality of experience. Then we talk about capability like a single mobile can be served with multiple base stations, right? And so all in all, it leads to the fact that you're bringing more features. So 5G is basically going to be a great enabler. Over and above that, there is a lot of innovation which is done on the architecture. So for example, 5G is all about cloud-based, as we all know. There is what is known as edge computing. For a good video experience, what it does is that it enables caching of the content, getting it more closer to the consumer, right? And the previous technologies, they were more hierarchical in nature. This is more flattish, right? So things like context-aware resource allocation, you're getting more closer to the content delivery nodes. So these are the things which 5G will bring on table. Last point, 5G slicing, I think this is going to be a game changer. So this is the capability in which you can reserve or earmark dedicated network resources on end to end. And like Vikram said, it's the overall experience, right? From the access to the core to the transmission. So 5G slicing kind of dedicates or reserves the network resources. And how it helps is it helps in on-demand video delivery, and it does beautifully on dynamic basis. So it are things like these, which 5G will, lead to enhancement of the quality of experience.
Thank you so much, Manoj. Yes, I do agree on the responsive edge. That's going to bring in a lot of innovation, not just for video, but many more services. I also agree with Vikram on the fact that a lot of towers need to be fiberized, or at least a backhaul, a higher capacity backhaul needs to be in place. That could come from fiber, that could come from satellites, but that needs to be in place to deliver the content or the high capacity to the consumer. Mahendra, let me come to you. With this capacity promise of 5G, do we see an uptick on the video quality, or the quality being delivered? Will all content be 4K, 8K, HDR, HFR? How do you see things going? Yes, sir? You're on mute, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5G has really opening a kind of view for video consumers. And I think this is one of the good things which is going to happen. I think we do have 4G coverage, and I think Mr. Vikram was saying that 4G coverage, we are number 3 or in the world. That's a good news, but that's a bad news, because 5G, again, we have to have investments of that order. And recycling the entire mechanism, because 5G, we have to really come out of our feeling of a tower and a backhaul. It has to be a radio network, basically, a cloud network. And as Manoj has very rightly said, that we have to really go closer to the people. So there's a lot of edge things and micro, sites and things will be there. It's a very good thing which is going to happen for video consumption. I was just looking at the worldwide data. Say currently we have 1.2 billion consumers, which is expected by 22 end. I think India has got minuscule today. We have not even started in cities, and even I don't have 5G. We have the phone, but no the 5G connections. Now, if you look at just 1% of these people, they consume for a 1 minute of video. You will need around how many amount of video content which will be required for the consumers. Similarly, the engagement is gaming. That this is gaming, VR, AR. These are the future technologies which is going to really be riding on this 5G network, and it opens up a great opportunity for all of us, especially video consumers, especially the content generating companies. It's a huge opportunity for, especially for India, because we have so much of content creative abilities which is not being unlocked because of remote areas. People are very, very talented, but they don't have facilities to really get their content into some platform. So I think I see personally a great opportunity on video production, on the technologies like AR, VR, and essentially if you see today, the volumetric video consumption also has to really come out of these 5G installations. And we are really planning a lot of businesses around these technologies. Yes, there is a change, and we must expect this change and get on to a system where we come out of this tower business. It has to be a business of collaboration and micro data centers, and these are the terms which now I think people should really look at. And we should always, India being a very, very different economy, and the price plays the lot of role here. So if you see that, if I can today think about that there can be 20, 30 at least editors in a small community. I think that will be a great revenue source for the people who are hosting these small sites and then serving the customers, rather than big towers and getting onto this. So that is one. And the challenge what I can see is that we do need to have creative capabilities which we have to harness. And there are initiatives which we are also doing in our company, and there are initiatives which need to happen so that these when 5G is available down the line, maybe 2 years down the time, at least we do have those kind of capabilities available, so that the operators who are spending a lot of money onto setting up 5G, still the 4G is not being sweated out as the capex. They should have some motivation for good revenues.
Thank you so much. So on the volumetric side, it's not just the access. I suppose that would also have to go back. That volumetric transport has to happen, and that needs an upgrade for the complete network, not just on the access side. I agree with you on that. Rajatji, coming to you from the having a pulse on what the consumer uses and consumes. So I would like to know, how do you think that 5G changing the ecosystem of reaching out to the consumer with our content?
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, AVIA, for having me here. It's a very, very interesting subject on which we are discussing. I have unfortunately have a bit different take on this. So we talk about 5G. Obviously, it's actually the 5th generation of the biggest innovation in modern world which happened. That is the internet, and we are talking about the 5th generation of it. We started first generation with the 256 kbps, and now we are talking about the gbps part of it, which is excellent. Any infra enhancement or any technology enhancement will go down well to serve the community, humanity, and we all are part of it. Coming to media part of it and media ecosystem, you mentioned, Rajiv. So there are three broad component of this ecosystem. One is the consumer. We all are consumers, and we all are part of that ecosystem. How does the 5G impact me? For me as a consumer, what I require a consistent connectivity, right? So for a video consumption, even of high definition, or for that matter, UHD TV, actually I don't require the last mile in Gbps. If I get bandwidth of 100 Mbps at my home, I'm having a bigger screen, I can consume a quality content. Unfortunately, now struggling, and when I say, I'm not talking about the metro or A class of city, talking from the entire country point of view. So do we have a consistent bandwidth of much below rating to what 5G promises? We unfortunately no, but that should not be a impediment in we going on to be. Certainly that would happen, and this is a evolving thing that would. So first point is whether consumer gets benefited in this directly, no. The other two parts of the ecosystem is the content production and content distribution. Now here is the game. So let's talk me about from the content production point of view. Now, because of the pandemic and COVID, which has happened, we all evolved into a remote production concepts. We all have started adopting, even for my organization, I deal with news, non-news, sports, entertainment and all, which used to be earlier the essentials. They are, or for that matter, perceived essentials, those are being challenged. For example, for a live news, an anchor in the studio is must. No, it's not. So anchors during 2 years, we have done all the news, and fortunately for us, the news viewership was very, very high during these last 2 years, wherein we had only the back-end team in the offices, rest everybody were at home. Similarly, on the entertainment, the productions have happened with actors being at different places, and we have served that well. So those were the issues which have happened. What 5G helps me over here is the collaborative production, because it is not the bandwidth which is important to me, it is the latency. 5G bringing in low is much more significant for media industry than the bandwidth. Bandwidth, yes, any bigger pipe is always welcome, but what we have today is also adequate. Latency is something which becomes important. The third part of the ecosystem is the content distribution. Now, distribution also again like is in two parts. We have digital platforms, the OTTs and all, and other is the traditional cable satellite homes. I would not want to touch on the challenging aspect with respect to the spectrum, which we all have been talking about, the C-band, which is getting allocated, and that has challenged actually the very existence of cable satellite homes. On the digital part, certainly the bigger bandwidth is good, but then we have edge computing at the CDN, which is already taking place. So it's the 5G doesn't help over there. It's the last mile, and then what the question becomes is wire versus wireless. If at my homes, if I have a bigger television to consume content, I'm normally wired. It's the fiber to the home is now becoming a norm. I would consume it through that on a bigger TV. On a smaller screen that is on mobile, which I consume the content while in transit or moving or outside, I do not require that bigger bandwidth. I require a consistent bandwidth because the video format that I'm consuming would not be that high. So that is wherein it becomes a question. Is it actually for a media industry? My take on that is no. Will the media industry get benefited? Said any enhancement of technology, one will have the impact. It's the applications. We as technologists should create applications around using these 5G pipes so that we can enhance the offerings. we have been talking about various technologies with respect to production, whether it's AR, VR, etc., and those have been there, and those are getting offered as well. But then we really look at that part of it. For example, like as we all know, analog has been better than digital. We have not been into analog because it's not an ideal world. We gradually started compressing, we started taking away the information, and to the consumers, we have started giving a compromised information to our consumers because there was a connectivity challenge. Now, in case I have a consistent pipeline, what perhaps we could look at reversing our compression technologies, go back to the MPEG-2 and enhanced MPEG-2, wherein you are providing much better picture quality to the consumers because you have a better bandwidth. And then the latency of MPEG-2 is lesser than that of MPEG-4, or for that matter, now that we are talking about AV1, HEVCC, etc. But every technology is aimed to compress it more and provide an output with at a lower bandwidth. If the pipe is bigger, why can't we look at reversing that part of it? Which also has an indirect point that my load data center, the server cores that I require, would be smaller. In turn, again, goes back to the carbon footprint point. The more the consumption, more the heat generation, and the impact on the environment. If we could look it from perspective, it could be a different game altogether.
Thank you. That's a very, very interesting perspective that you have brought in. I'm not sure how popular of you will be because of that opinion. Anyway, so what we did morning was we ran 2 polls, and the polls ran for all the people who are attending this Future of Video India event. The first poll was regarding which part of the video value chain will have the maximum impact because of 5G. And we have on our screens right now the poll results. So it's interesting to see that B2B distribution scores over the direct-to-consumer distribution. That's really surprising. I thought most of the discussions around 5G are in terms of access. This seems to say that the professional community sees the video B2B distribution as having more impact than the access part. We also had another poll, which was what additional, we have it on screen, what additional use cases are best supported. And we are looking at 4K, 8K, and low latency video delivery. That seems to be, and Rajat, you touched on that, and most of us touched on the low latency. Manoj also touched on the low latency. And so coming back to this, these give some interesting points to take on from here on, but we have only 7 minutes left. So I'll just request you to be brief in your responses. Vyasa, I'll come back to you on this. In terms of when it comes to, we have not talked of low latency, we have talked of spectrum a lot. And where do you see this? Are there any ways of, you touched upon how your unicast is being used even for live events, which means that each IP stream is separate. Are there any ways of conserving spectrum or having efficient use of spectrum for video streaming on these networks?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier because I really differ with that 5G is not for video. It is for video also, and most of it may not be for a classical consumption, what we have been doing today on a linear TV, but I think gradually, this is going to be there for most of the distribution of video. Now, what I'm saying is that there are a number of other ways to conserve spectrum. And I must say that 5G is not really, we should not really say that this is only for classical video distribution or, a linear channels or things like that. It's not meant for that. There, I will recommend and I will say that there are frequency bands which are reserved with Prasar Bharati for, digital distribution. And I think we should use that to conserve these kind of video distribution. And ATSC 3.0 is one technology where we can really collaborate and work out. On every city, we can have a bunch of video streams without wasting the bandwidth of 5G. I will recommend that 5G, we should use it very gainfully for education, for training, for videos which requires huge interactivity. We have smart industries which do need these kind of volumetric video and other areas. So I think those are the things where we can use and conserve it. For video, I will still recommend that we should go on a linear video distribution, ATSC 3.0. There is a 560 around band is there. And fortunately, I'm very happy that TRI has kept it away from the auction. And this should be really preserved, because these are technologies which keep on growing, and we should have at least some band which is there to conserve the entire wastage. That okay, I have to do a million subscriber in a big town. I should not really have this on a IP network, TCP IP or a normal IP network.
Thank you so much, Vyasar. I'm moving fast to Manoj on that point. You see, multicast has been tried, has been attempted right from the media flow days, then on to the MBMS thing. And unfortunately, there have been issues in different geographies about the device ecosystem. So are there any point to multi-point enablers within the 5G framework?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Rajiv. So I think I have to go a little bit back towards the history. You talked about MBMS, and MBMS basically brought in the multicast capability in a cellular network was a much talked about phenomena. And now the big question is that why didn't it took off, right? I think the simple answer is the device ecosystem. I think that was missing. The chipsets, they were not available in plenty, and therefore the device manufacturers, they simply did not have the cost points and the choice. So that was one. The second thing was the spectrum scarcity. Because the devices were less, would you really earmark that spectrum for the MBMS use, right? So, those were the limitations. And now, how will 5G change that? The good news is that MBMS has been given a huge impetus. And in fact, so every technology actually has a release. MBMS in 5G is a huge feature of release 17. It's a late entrant, that's all right. But, there's a lot of focus. So for example, this release 17 defines APIs for mission critical services like push to talk kind of services. As we speak today, the chipset choices are much better, right? We have the Snapdragon 850, JioPhone 2, so on and so forth. Over and above that, what's so unique in 5G is things like bandwidth part. It's a feature in which you can slice the carrier into sub portions. And, it kind of gives you the flexibility to have a more optimum use of the spectrum, which Mr. Vyas and Rajat also were mentioning. You then talk about beamform. The other important thing is the service differentiation, the quality of service handling. So, all these features and add-ons in 5G will again lead to more efficiencies and better experience for the users.
Thank you so much. Vikram, would you like to come in here and let us know, besides the raw capacity of the 5G, how would that help in reaching out to the home networks? You talked about that. You talked about fixed wireless access. And we have 30 seconds for you, please, because we would like to drop out with a crystal ball glazing if possible.
So clearly, as was mentioned, the fixed wireless access is for us in India with low fiberization, the fixed wireless access is the equivalent of fiber. And later on, if we get the E and V bands, so they are like, fiber in the air. So the question is about in what time frame is this video getting consumed, right? So obviously, if we are fiberizing the country, it takes a huge amount of time. But with 5G technologies and with fixed wireless access and dovetailing that with the E and V band for a backhaul or even in access, So that has a huge potential to progress and to deliver video to consumers. One very interesting thing that I've observed.
Vikram, I'm sorry I have to interrupt you here, but we have only
Okay.
30 seconds left, and I wanted to go back to crystal ball glazing with lots of your experience and some crystal ball glazing. One line each. When do you see this happening? Each one of you, starting with you, Vikram.
Or let's say in pockets, Q4 of this year.
Rajat?
Yeah, starts. It's an evolving thing. It will happen over a period. But then when will the real applications get developed and reach the, that's what the timing would be important.
So, Manoj?
Yeah, I would say mid 2024, because the good thing is that we have already 10 million 5G devices in the country and 30 million have been shipped in the past 2 months. So the devices ecosystem will be the key, crucial factor. So mid 2024, that's my guess.
Mr. Vyas,
Yeah.
your take on that?
I'll go with Manoj because I really know that the devices will play a lot of important role. And I think 23, 24 will be the time when we will see that at least some 5G traction will happen. But I think when that happens, we'll have 6G trials going on right now. So we don't know that where the ecosystem will end.
So we are running out of time. We have some audience questions which will be mailing to you, and maybe we'll send back the response to them. Thank you so much for all your time and participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.